if you want to make movies, go make movies. No investor is going to go to you and give you $1 million to make your movie based off of how many Instagram followers you have. You get really good at the thing that you are surrounded by. Surround yourself with good people that are going to call you out on your stuff, because that is actually how you grow. I don't know. Sometimes I isolate myself and I'm thinking I'm doing so good, but then I get into public with my friends or our community and I'm like, oh, I got to work on some things still.
Hey guys, my name is Ben Gluntz, and this is the Created to Create podcast. Welcome if this is your first time. We like to talk about big dreams on this podcast because we're firm believers that big dreams and God go hand in hand. So today I have Jace Hardwick. He's a creative producer, a director, a manager of not one, but two entertainment companies, Action Studios and Social Jump. He's based in Los Angeles, California, all the way on the west coast of the United States, if you didn't know where that was. He's a good friend of mine, and he's worked with companies like Snapchat, big names like Zach King and Jordan Peterson, and overall, he's just a great guy. So welcome to the show, Jace.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
You forgot to add that I'm 6'5", washboard abs, super good looking, super successful. That's okay though. It's fine though. It's we'll put that in. You can redo the intro and then
round two. We'll do it at the end.
Okay, yeah. We'll do it. Well, that's fine.
Let me just type this in.
Okay, cool.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, about Jace Hardwick, day in the life, kind of what you do on a daily basis.
Mainly a lot right now has just been like managing teams and working more in like the commercial space. Like I said, I run with two different companies. We put another person, Nathan, over Social Jump, which is our social media company. And then Action Studios right now is more in the ad space. So my day-to-day is kind of more overseeing and editing and going out and making relationships with people so that we can kind of funnel people into what we do best. So a lot of it's just like having meetings and note revision over things right now. That's kind of the day-to-day right now for stuff. But
how important is a morning routine to you?
Super important. I wish I had one.
Yeah, you mentioned you were kind of in transient mode. So
yeah, it's really hard when you don't live in one space to have any sort of routine ever, because the routine changes per month. I will say though, I am the best. I feel the best when I wake up, read my Bible, work out, have a light breakfast, get sun in my eyes as soon as possible, because most of the job right now is sitting in front of a computer screen or just on phone calls. So.
Oh yeah. Morning walks, man. Morning walks really get me going.
Yep.
I've introduced those into my routine lately.
Yep.
Game change.
Sun in the eyes, just moving in the morning has definitely changed. If I can get up. Getting up is painful for me though. It's like the worst. And I don't know when that started, because when I was a kid, I just shoot it right out of bed, and I was like, I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm fine. I'm Mountain Dew, shot up on Mountain Dew. But now I can't get up, dude. I'm like, it hurts. It's like super painful.
Dude, you got to throw back that C4 energy.
Yeah, you just got to C4 it up. And no, I think it's, I think your morning
routine. Don't drink
routine,
that. That's bad for you.
It's terrible. It makes my skin itchy. But I think going to bed at a certain time every single time helps you get up in the morning.
Yeah.
And then not eating past 8 o'clock and no sugar past 8, like I can actually sleep all the way through. And I've actually been doing a lot of studies of people saying what they eat affects their sleep, and I've been testing it. Yeah. And for me, I've been noticing a massive difference being able to wake up when I don't eat past 8 o'clock and if I don't have sugar during the day.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And when it comes to like your productivity in the morning, does that have like a direct effect as well?
Well, yeah, I'm like way more energetic in the morning. So like I can tell when I'm eating, sleep is a big part of it too, but if I'm eating well the night before and don't eat past 8, when I wake up, it doesn't hurt as much. And then I'm up and then I'm moving and I feel more awake. So I don't know.
That makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Might have to try it. I
could just be saying random facts that aren't true, but you'll clip it together so I sound really smart, right?
No, man, this is all raw. No, I'm right there with you though. I need to get back on a schedule with sleep because I've been running around as well.
Well, you bounce back and forth more than anybody else in our group does. You're in friggin' Chicago back to here, and I don't never know where you're at, dude.
Dude, you gotta hit the polls, man.
You're literally FaceTiming yesterday, and you're like not in California, and then you're literally in California.
I'm here. I'm here,
nuts,
here in the flesh. Let's go.
Yeah, maybe I'm just pulling at you. Maybe I was a little jealous of your travel, so I was like, what if I just didn't have a house? Maybe if I just didn't do that.
Why not?
Who needs consistency in their life?
Nobody.
Nobody needs that.
Just kidding. I do. I need
it really bad.
I find it in different ways. I find it in different ways. Let's jump into like what you do and kind of how you got called to that. We'll just say this, how do you view your work now in relation to your calling?
I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with my testimony, but I got into the film space because of my sister. Okay. So like when I was growing up as a kid, she would put me in all of her movies and her friends' movies, and I was always the kid in her movies. And then she went to Hollywood for a while, and she was doing a lot of makeup in the industry. And that kind of got me that got me the film bug. Okay. And I always wanted to make movies when I was young. And so I remember like looking back, like even like looking at old videos, like I remember actually, this is a crazy flashback. I haven't even thought about this. I remember going to my friend Connor's house when we were really young and asking her mom to always film us doing war movies, which is nuts because now I'm thinking about it. We do a lot of action-based like stuff and comedy stuff. And
I mean, it's in the name.
Action Studios, man. Yeah. Like, and so she would run around with us, and it was always like a war movie, and we had like sticks in our hands, and we thought it was so cool, and we would watch it. We would ask, like, the second she filmed it, we're like, can we watch it? So I now that I'm thinking about it, I was in it since I was deep. That's crazy.
Honestly, I relate because I think back to the first videos I made, and this is way before I even thought of a career, but they were Nerf war videos. Like we would create like Nerf war videos, and so weird because other than that, like I didn't really create with a camera at all. But I remember me and my buddy at the time, Aaron, we would just like create these Nerf war videos through his house.
It's just fun. Yeah. I just remember as a kid, my imagination was just like so I mean, as every like little boy probably is, but I just remember like playing pretend in the front yard and just like having massive battles and then being like, I want to film that. Yeah. And I remember trying to make movies when I was like, even before middle school, trying to like figure out how to do green screen with like my bed sheets that were kind of green or blue. And I'm like, okay, we could do the VFX, it'll work. So I guess it was like ingrained in me since I was like really little. And then I started making YouTube videos with my co-director Yo-Yo, which was a lot more like comedy. It was like action comedy was what we did. And then our videos started like, they weren't amazing, but they started doing a lot better. And we started winning some like YouTube competitions and kind of getting on the map in the YouTube space. And then that kind of put me on a trajectory to think, as I was going more into like high school, college, being like, oh, we can make like really high quality stuff. And then we got heavy in the VFX space because of my friend Steven, who now works for James Cameron, teaching us how to do VFX. And we were just putting out stuff that like majority people couldn't really put out, VFX comedy action stuff. And then that kind of got me launching the company Action Studios, and really, really wanting to make movies. However, that kind of goes into an interesting space too, where I was on a trajectory for a while of wanting to make big epic stuff. And this kind of goes into your testimony question a little bit, because I became a believer like 7 years ago now.
Got it.
And I would always say that I was like culturally Christian growing up. Like I thought God was cool. I was like, but then I partied and did whatever I wanted. And then it wasn't until my mom asked me if I had a relationship with Christ, where I didn't really understand what that meant. And that kind of put me on a trajectory during college to like go and study and be like, okay, if I'm going to believe in this thing, I actually need to like know if it's true or not. And what I tell a lot of people is as I was going through my film journey, I legitimately, as humbly as I can say, I legitimately think I could have been really successful as like an influencer because I understood the humor. Yeah. Like we were making videos that started to get millions of views on TikTok. We started getting like millions of views on some of our stuff. And
you're talking like Charli D'Amelio dances, right?
Yeah. I was dancing like crazy. It was going. Could you imagine me just doing? Hey, I mean, you've seen me on the dance floor, man.
You go hard.
I got some moves. I got some moves.
I can see it.
But But I think that was the route that I was going to go. And then I think that I went through a really crazy period of time where I discovered that Jesus was true and that he literally came and died for me and wants a relationship with me. And that put me on a really different trajectory than I thought I was going to be. Because honestly, by 23, I was like, I'm going to be a famous influencer doing what I want, whatever. And like, I feel like I could have done it. And I was in that party phase still. Yeah. So that's why I can say, like, I think that I would became one of those influencers that I didn't really want to become now looking back. Yeah. And then when God kind of put me on my face and I kind of got a relationship with Christ, I kind of realized like what was important and my heart changed a lot. And that has been transforming a lot of my content recently, trying to figure out, okay, how do I tell biblically moral things or things that are funny that aren't necessarily crass or have to be crass. Yeah. And we have kind of started to unlock it, but it's been like, we're still learning how to do it now. Cause I feel like I know how to make worldly jokes. But it's been an interesting thing being like, how do I make action or things like that like still have the epicness of it or the comedy, but that is still like feel good and has good values or, you know, which is just coming down to being real, I think. But that's kind of, so in a nutshell, you asked me like, you know, how did I get in the space that I got? It's kind of all interwoven at this point. So. Well,
life's funny anyway, so there's plenty of humor to draw from.
Well, and Jesus is the funniest guy on the planet. If you actually start looking at what he did, messing with his disciples, like he's a funny dude. He's the author of comedy, so I'm just gonna learn from the best.
There you go. Yeah. It's the best way to do it. Well, so now you're heavily in like still doing a lot of these bits, but you're also doing a lot of like commercial work as well. Still have to do like client work to kind of like keep the business running. So how do you find your calling in that client work specifically as well?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of been the learning curve right now is like, I think for a really long time, I had the thought of when I become successful or when I do this, God can use me. And recently it's been a big mental shift of no, my purpose is to know God and make him known. And a lot of times God's mission is very, very simple. It's like, be a good boyfriend, be a good son to your parents, be a good friend, have sacrificial love for your neighbor and your friends. And like putting into those like little moments with people, like human relationships. And then on the side, when I'm doing my work, if God gives me work or whatever he does, do it well and find the opportunities in the work to bless your clients, go the extra mile. As Christians, we're called to do things well with anything that we're given. Yeah. And I think that's kind of been a big mental shift of like, oh, anything I have that God gives me is important. Doesn't matter who I'm working for. It could be a really small client, really big client, doesn't matter. It's like treat them all the same because one, they're all made in the image of God. And it's like, I want to help them. This is how I can serve other people. And two, it's like, it's not always about having the biggest project, which before I think that was my mental shift was like, I have to hit the top brands. I have to do all this stuff. And I think God's kind of he's been blessing our company tenfold, but really I think he's been holding back a lot to teach me that is a secondary tool to be used for the first mission, which is just, what's my mission? Know me and make me known.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And it kind of helps you to have some of those bigger jobs, bigger opportunities in the bag and on the horizon where they become a tool, like you were saying, to like spread the gospel and like make him known.
And that's kind of been a big thing too. And our pastor at church at Collective does a really good job of talking about this too. But it's like, wake up every morning, and I don't do it every day, but wake up every morning being like God first, then everything else. And it's so easy as a creative to put this thing first and then ask God to come into it. And I remember having a conversation with my sister where she was like, how often do you just start doing something and then ask God to be a part of it versus waking up and being like, God, what do you want me to do today? I will do that and I'll do it well. Obviously you have responsibilities and things like that we're called to do, but that was just like a really interesting question that I think she asked me that I've been trying to like ask myself every day being like, okay, I have responsibilities, I have client stuff, but it's like, God, what do you want me to do today? And sometimes it's just him being like, go help your like roommate for 5 minutes, and then you can keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So really waking up and making that shift to be like, God first, then this thing. Because he gave me this thing anyway. So I don't want this to be my idol. Yeah. So
no, I like that a lot. And like inviting God into that space and into your schedule and allowing him to kind of orchestrate what your days look like.
Yeah.
It's so important to plan. And I've learned that more than ever recently. But I still realize the importance of allowing God to orchestrate that plan, because like at the end of the day, he's the one who created this whole thing anyway. And he's the one who has sovereign power over that. And I've just seen when I step back and I do put him first, there are just like providential, divine moments that happen, whether it's helping a roommate with something or whether it's a conversation with a stranger, a client, a coworker of sorts, where like someone genuinely needs a listening ear, needs someone to talk to about something, and there's a real genuine moment going on. And if we're too caught up in things, like we'll miss it. Yeah. And not that we are the solution to that moment, but God is, and we're a vessel for that. And so we need to be ready to take action, to like take steps that we weren't necessarily planning on taking in the day.
It's the whole mentality of like, are you available for God?
Yeah.
How much time can you carve out to be available for God in every moment, right? Yeah. And it's like, you can do that moment by moment. Even if you like kind of forgot, you can just be like how you prayed before the podcast, just being like, we welcome you into this, how like, so.
Repositioning moment by moment, like your heart posture, because maybe it's my ADHD, but man, bro, like I forget about things and I'm an airhead all the time.
I'm a creative, dude. All creatives are just like, go, ADD, we're all over the place. Yeah. So
I think that was one of the main things too, like in my testimony, which we won't get too deep into, but there was a moment where, like I really was trying to do too much with my life, and the Lord very specifically like called me back and was like, hey, slow down and give all of these things to me and watch how I'm going to like give you the ability to do 10 times, 20 times more than you thought.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that blows my mind, because like I see my capacity very clearly and it's very small, to be honest. And to see God like expand that and just blow past the parameters that I thought I was held within, just, oh my gosh, bro.
It was yeah. I like, there's this artist that I saw on Instagram that I love. I always love this photo, but it's like a little girl holding onto a tiny teddy bear, and then it's Jesus with a massive teddy bear behind his back. And he's just like holding out his hand saying, trust me. And I'm like, that is like the day-to-day call, at least for me, it's just being like letting go of what I think I can do. And then just knowing that like he literally is the author of everything. And he just like, every time. It's like, it's so dumb, dude. It's like, I'm like, I don't know why I don't just go to him every time, because it's always better. Sometimes it's harder because he's gonna rip some things out and like you're gonna grow, but it's always better. And like I always like beat myself up for being like, just go to him, dude. Just, it's so much better. He's gonna give you so much more. It's always simple.
So simple.
It's always simple. Like
we just make it hard because we're idiots.
Yep. Yep.
No better way to say that.
We're his idiots.
Yeah, we're his kids.
It's like, this idiot. All right, I'll fix your problems again.
Let's shift gears a little bit. What's your, you like movies. What's your favorite film of all time?
I feel like it changes every time, man. I don't know. I do, honestly, my top 10
This is your time to nerd out, by the way.
This is it.
I set this apart in the
Boss
podcast.
Baby. Boss Baby is my favorite movie. I love that movie. Actually, I do really like Boss Baby.
It's honestly kind of funny.
Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon. Actually, every time somebody asks me this, it's always those two movies.
You're going to get me to nerd out too,
dude,
bro.
I love those movies. They're so good. And it's so funny because every time somebody asks me, what's your favorite movies? It's always animated films or anime. And I'm like, am I supposed to be like an animated director or something? I don't know how to do that. Like I legitimately have no clue. I tried to do that for our film festival that we hosted, by the way. Hardest thing I have ever tried to make in my life was a 3D.
Tedious as all get out.
Oh my gosh, dude. It was the hardest thing. But Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon. How to Train Your Dragon, like all 3 of those movies are good.
So good.
None of them miss. Kung Fu Panda, third one
missed.
Absolute worst. But the first and the second one,
different writers, I think.
Yeah, different writers.
We'll fact check that.
Yeah, well, whatever. But I love Jack Black in that. He's freaking hilarious. I actually got to meet him, actually. This
really?
Random side note, but I got to meet him on a Zach King shoot. Super funny dude. He knows how to, like, when you're filming with him, it's like he's doing a stand-up comedy act on set, making the whole crew laugh and, like, using the crew's, like, feedback to tell his jokes to keep going. It's crazy. It was really fun watching him do his thing.
Yeah, that's so funny you mentioned that too, because one of my random questions for you was, like, you've been around like celebrities here and there. Mm-hmm. What's like the most surprising thing about like meeting a celebrity that you didn't really think was a reality?
They're all just normal. They're super normal. I mean, like, I've met some that are like bigwigs, and sometimes I get like a little like, oh, like that's that person. And then I meet them and they're like, they're just so normal.
Yeah.
And I
normal
think,
as in how? Like normal,
like,
explain that.
I think that every creative can even kind of talk about it, or like actors like that. But like you get put up on a pedestal because you're just seeing like the best of everybody's life. You have this sense of like, oh, I know that person. It's kind of like branding, where it's like the more it's pushed in your face, you're like, you have a personal connection with them. Yeah. So you kind of learn very, very quickly that it's like, oh, like these people like have families and they have problems dealing with their kids or whatever. Like, it's just like their normal day to day is normal. Yeah. But we just kind of live in an era where they get like put up on this crazy pedestal. And it's always nice meeting them, because like sometimes like you hear like things in the news, you're like, oh, this person, whatever. Like you're hearing everybody else's opinion about them. And then you meet them in person, you're like, they're just like a genuine normal person and they're super chill. I mean, I've gotten the pleasure to work with a few different people, but for the most part, it's like everyone, at least I have met, like, I think they're nice. And
I think it's a reflection too of like just humans in general.
Yeah.
Like we tend to blast people that aren't necessarily nice or normal.
Something like that. But
in reality, like the majority of people are decent human beings at the least.
I think the thing that I've actually noticed the most is that what's really rough for actors and big name influencers or whatever is that their whole life is typically on display. Mm-hmm. So they can't really get away with a lot of things. Like if you I have so many bad days. I cannot imagine being a bigwig influencer.
Pressure.
Because the pressure of it is that, frankly, it's like I have bad days, and if you catch me one time, the internet's going to blow that up and be like, oh, look at this person, just like he's a total jerk. Yeah. And it's like, dude, everyone's human. Like everybody's literally dealing with something, and the problem is that like you get caught for like one thing, and everybody wants to point fingers and say, oh, you're doing this wrong, and that's the whole biblical principle, right? Take the plank out of your own eye before you're going to take the speck out of your brother's eye. And that's the whole thing, right? It's just like, of course it's easier for you behind a screen to be like, oh, they're doing this thing wrong. It's like, you don't have a single clue what they're going through in their life. And unfortunately, it's on display for you and yours isn't. Yeah. So before you start saying, oh, why did they do this? You got to kind of ask yourself, well, what do you got to win? Whatever.
Yeah,
so
have to.
Yeah, but
that's good.
Jack Black was fun.
Dude,
fun
Jack
guy.
Black, hopefully I'll get to meet him at some point. He sounds cool. When it comes to the creative world, working in Hollywood, in showbiz, what is one of the toughest things you've come across as a believer working in that industry, and how have you kind of like worked through that?
For the most part, I would actually say that I've been pretty blessed to work with really cool people. Okay. I know that there's a whole stigma that Hollywood's really dark, and I have seen parts of that. I have been blessed not to be in it a lot. I will say though that and we can get into this later or whatever, but as me and my partner Andrew with our company, as we're trying to pitch movies and do all this stuff, we're kind of learning like it's a very not like left versus right wing political, but it's a very political sphere in the sense of like a lot of things matter, and the way that you present yourself really matters. And so that's really hard. And as we're trying to write stories as believers, trying to figure out how to tell really cool stories that have good principles that are rooted naturally in every human being, and trying to create something that doesn't just fit the rest of the world's narrative. And so I think that's kind of been the hardest thing. Like commercials is one thing. Commercials is kind of easy because it's like you're selling a product, doing whatever. Yeah. But I think as we're trying to write stories and like I said before, trying to make comedy bits that like aren't crass or whatever, is like really trying to stick to your guns on what you believe and trying to make things that, it's like that whole cliche saying is like, if Jesus was in the room, would he approve of what I'm doing? Right. And trying to figure out, okay, how do I make action movies where there's like killing and violence, and like comedy where sometimes I love dark comedy. That's the other problem, is like I love dark humor. And there's a total time and a place for it. I think that they're like, even in the Bible, you have like rated R stuff going on, but it's always for a point, and it's always glorifying. It's never glorifying evil and glorifying God in those moments. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out the best and the most right now, is like, how do I tell really dark stories sometimes and glorify good and don't glorify evil. Like the great example that I've talked to with some of my mentors is like Breaking Bad is kind of intense, man. But they're not intense. Glorifying the sin. Like you see that guy just go down a freaking spiral and you're like, yeah I wouldn't want to do that. Yeah. Like, and so
showing the ugly side of it for what it is.
And just trying to be responsible, because honestly, you're not going to appease everybody, and that's going to be the whole thing. So just trying to figure out, okay, like be intentional with your stories, be intentional with what you're trying to say, and do it to the best of your ability. You're not going to appease everybody, but it's like, as long as my heart posture is in the right place and really trying to go to the Lord with everything, I think that's been the hardest thing. It's like, because I know how I can just make a banger film that's just gonna like reel in the money, and I can just like throw whatever I want in there. But that's kind of the.
I think anybody can do that now. You know, anybody can make something that appeases people. The trouble is, like you were saying, how do you create something that makes someone think on a deep level?
Yeah, or wrestle with themselves and be like, oh, that's a good question. Like, I don't know about that. Like, that's what I want to walk. And granted, it's still an art. I'm not saying that like anybody could just go make a movie. And I'm still practicing. Like, that's so hard to do. And like, I respect so many believer and non-believer movies. Like, I've been so impacted by so many like non-Christian movies, because they know what they want to say and they say it really well. And inherently, we all know what's bad and what's good, right? We know like evil is evil. And so
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up on Lord of the Rings. Like, Lord of the Rings is sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it was totally written in like biblical principles, and the guy was Catholic and all that stuff. But like, it's so sick.
Yeah.
Like, that's the stuff I want to make.
Stories.
Yeah, I want to make those stories, real stories. And that's the other thing. This is something that I've learned a lot from my mentors too. Is just telling, like, be truthful. Mm-hmm. If you're being truthful, it's going to work and it's going to impact somebody. And I think that's a question that, as like a writer, no matter what your faith is, no matter whatever, it's just like, are you being honest about the subject? Mm-hmm. That's a big thing that I've been learning. It's like, be truthful to the subject that is being talked about. And no matter what your background is, no matter what, like, the story is going to come out and be good and give you a good perspective on how to think about stuff and whatever.
Break down kind of like if a young creative wants to make a movie, what are some of the first things he can or she can think about while getting started in that space?
You're asking this question at the right time. So me and my producer, Andrew, are trying to figure out how to go pitch our first slate of movies. Like, we're in it like literally right now. And we've been asking them the same question for like the past 6 years, even going to school for it, all that stuff. And I got to recently sit down with two of my mentors that I just like value their opinion so much. One is Abel Vang. The other is Matthew Little. Abel Vang like got on top Netflix, number one on Netflix. Now he's doing stuff for Disney, doing stuff for Ubisoft. Like, he's in it now. And Matthew Little is he's done like 3 different movies. I don't know if I'm allowed to say what movie he's doing right now, but okay. He's in it.
Top dogs.
So here's the advice that they gave me. And I wish that somebody told me this. And I actually was just talking to a few of our friends, because we've been all trying to figure out how to get into it. And it's
Buckle up.
It's really simple too. If you want to make movies, go make movies.
Really?
That was their advice. But let me break down
Open that up.
So I asked them, this is the questions that I asked back. Cause I was like, okay, I've heard that before. If you want to go make movies, go make movies. They broke it down like this. If basically Matthew Little and Abel were basically explaining to me, like, if I came to you and I was saying, hey, I need the best commercial ever. I need to make a commercial. And you're like, oh, I'm really good at web design. Okay, they're both two creative spaces. Or you're like, oh, I'm really good at photography. It's like, I'm not going to go to you. I'm going to go to the guy who knows how to make commercials. Same thing with movies. The problem is a lot of people and a lot of young filmmakers and in the creative space think, okay, I'm going to go blow up on YouTube. I'm going to go blow up in like making shorts on Instagram or whatever. That's good portfolio work. No investor is going to go to you and give you $1 million to make your movie based off of how many Instagram followers you have. And the problem is that I've even kind of talked to some people in the influencer space. I actually remember having a meeting with Zach King, and he kind of talked about how social media has become a really long roundabout to getting towards movies. Granted, he really loves the space, but you get really good at the thing that you are surrounded by. So if you're in the YouTube space, you're going to get really good at making YouTube videos. It's not the same as making really good movies. So the advice that they told me,
completely different process from a producing standpoint.
Completely different. Also, it's like an investment. Like if you know anything about real estate, like you need to know the art of what makes money for a movie. Because it's at the end of the day, it's a business. Like you might have this crazy idea that you want, but you're talking like millions of dollars.
Otherwise, you're stuck in the indie film space.
Yeah, like I'm not going to give you $1 million to do stuff. And that was the other question I asked him. I was like, short films. Should you do short films? And he's like, no.
Just make the movies.
Just go make movies.
Interesting.
Short films don't make money. Short films are good. They're good for practice. And they said there's a time and a place. And like, if you can go win Sundance and whatever, do it.
Well, and I've heard also like short films are the key to making that specific idea a movie. It's a movie. A pitch.
And so that's what one of them told me is like, if you're going to go do a short film, it better have a big script attached to it, ready for you to pitch. The other thing is that if you're going to do it, you better make it look like a movie, because if you walk into a pitch meeting and asking for like $1 million plus on something and it doesn't look like $1 million movie,
you can't even show the production value.
An investor is going to be like, well, you don't even know how to make a movie look like a movie. So I'm not going to do that. So the advice was go make a movie. So then the question I asked him, it's like, okay, I haven't made a movie yet as a director. How do I get my first movie? And he's basically, the advice was, you just got to buckle down and do it. Go get a pitch. Go get your movie that you believe in. Do market research. Your movie is going to go to 10 different platforms. Know what the platforms are. Know what they want. Know what's popular in the industry. Like the creator right now is talking about AI. AI is everywhere. Of course, that's going to get picked up. So do market research. And their
marketing too was genius too, because they knew that they could.
Brilliant.
Stick a couple robots in a football stadium.
Oh, it was all over social media too. You see all those things where like the robots are playing different things. Right. That was all marketing. So know the industry, know the market, and then do your research, write your script. Once you have the one that you really, really want, this is what he said. I asked him, I'm like, okay, I'm a director that hasn't made movies yet. So how do I get investors to say yes? He says, go find everybody else that has. Go hire a DP that has done it, has been on Netflix, has done whatever. Go get a producer that's been in it. Go get a writer that's won something. Because if you're the guy that can rally other people that have done it, that means that you're somebody that can rally good people. So
I don't need more people that you get on board that have already done it, the more recognition you're going to get from other people that are connected to those people that have.
So you're not saying yes to me. You're saying yes to the whole crew that has done it before. Okay, you're smart enough. And they're going
to fill in gaps that you maybe not, you wouldn't know how to do certain things, and they're going to be able to come alongside you. And
then the next question I asked was, how do I get money for the movie? And he said, just go start with your family. Hey, mom, do you know anybody that knows anybody? Yeah, I got an uncle. Hey, uncle, do you know anybody that knows a lot of people? Oh, I got a friend that knows a lot of people. And then all of a sudden...
Every uncle has a friend.
Every uncle has a friend. Yeah, you're like, what if I don't have an uncle? Then you're screwed.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about it. So, and then at that point, you're finding... everybody knows somebody, right? And you're just going to try to pitch that movie. And eventually, if your pitch is good, you're going to get the money to do it. That was the advice that they gave me. To get your first movie off the ground. And the last piece of advice that they said is throw as much money as humanly possible at your A-lister actor, because actors sell your movies. And that was the one thing that he told me that he wished that he did better, was that he wished that on his first movie, he spent more money on his A-lister actor, because nowadays you can make anything look good. Like, we can run around with like an iPhone and make it look good. Your actor is going to sell the movie. So that was a good question at the right time, because that's literally what we're in right now.
Well, I appreciate you breaking that down, and hopefully everybody was able to like glean something off of that and get some knowledge. So
you can thank them. Thank my mentors that gave that to me. That wasn't me. They literally told me this like the past few weeks. So.
No, I think that's huge though. That's huge advice. And to break it down like that is really cool too. Cause at the end of the day, like we were talking about with other things, like it really is simple.
Yeah.
It's like not rocket science if you think about it. But it's just about aligning yourself with the right people and aligning yourself with the right vision. And then
the last thing I would say in the movie space, you're not trying to impress millions of people on the internet. You're trying to impress the few, like 3 or 4 people that are going to get your movie off the ground. So impress the right people.
That's big.
Yeah.
That's big. I love it. Let's switch gears a little bit. How has community played a role in your walk with God and career?
Yeah.
And how important is that too?
Community is pretty much everything. Coming to LA, I didn't think I was going to be in LA for a super long time. And then I was very, very blessed to meet the group that we're in, which is like a 200 plus, like Christian or morally sound, creative
just genuine
group
people
in LA that like anytime everybody like finds this group, they're like, dude, I didn't know that they were like genuine human beings trying to elevate one another to make them better.
The craziest
which
thing.
is crazy. And it's a total God
Put
thing.
it on blast all the time.
We always do. I'm like, if you come to LA, you want to meet like good, genuine people, just hang out with this group.
And what a blessing too, to be able to offer that.
Yes.
To like I have friends that'll hit me up and be like, hey, like my homie is wanting to move out there. And I'm like, 100%, like bring him in.
Yeah. I always want it. Anytime I meet somebody, I'm like, just meet this group. I just want to elevate you. I want to lift you up. We want to like make you succeed.
And there's so many people now that it's like, for the most part, anybody can come in and find a tribe.
Yeah. There's like little groups within the big group and it's really cool. So, but I think that I don't think I'd be in LA if I didn't have the community that I did. Really? And I think this season of life too, I've been really learning like how God designed us for relationships. And I'm really seeing that play out day to day. And I think that we had a little bit of a discussion before where I'm really learning. It's been a really cool example of this friend group kind of reflects what I think the church body needs to be. People that love you genuinely, that will speak into your life and kind of bring up the hard things. Not because we want to poke holes or whatever, but because we genuinely want to, quote unquote, like lift each other up and help us like run the race well. It's always coming from like a place of love. And I think because of seeing that in this group, I've also got to experience how the church is too, where it's like, you know, you come into the church and we are now spiritually responsible for you. Yeah. Like your pastors are now spiritually responsible. They're going to be accountable by God to like hold an account of, did they take care of you well? Yeah. And this community, both in the church and out of the church, because a lot of our community now goes to the same church that we go to.
Well, one of my questions I was going to ask was like, is it possible to find community outside of the church that is what you need as a believer?
I believe so. I think that I've been learning a lot about how, okay, one, there's the function of the church. There's a reason why church is a thing, right? Like it's all over the Bible. The whole thing is about Jesus coming back for its bride, the church and stuff like that. Like, I think we're definitely called to do stuff through the church. And there's a reason why that's always, I never really understood that growing up, like why that was a thing, but it's like, oh, you're surrounded by a community who you need to have genuine connection with, that's genuinely trying to make you better. And then of course you're gonna have like your small group in your church that like your mentors that like are gonna speak into your life so that through the church you can now go out. And the reason why that's so important is because you need to be spiritually in a good space. You need people pouring into you, helping you, right? Like I always like the example that church is like a hospital, right? Like you're going there to like be healed. But once you're healed, now you are ready to go out into the world. Spiritually, you're ready to go out in the world and make an impact because you have God first. Everything's right. Like they're your support system. And I do think that you can find that outside of the church too, like with like our friend group that are strong believers that are trying to do the same thing, speak into each other's lives and do things through that lens. But I do, the more I get older, you know, I'm always like, oh, down with the system, whatever. I'm really learning like why systems are like in place when done right, right? Like no church is perfect, and you have to understand that we're all sinners, we're all falling short. But when a good church has a good heart posture and a good community has a good heart posture, and you're doing through those things through together, like community has been like, I don't know, like you need people. Like you can isolate yourself, and sure, but it's so funny. The second you put yourself into a group of people that genuinely want to speak truth into your life, that's when you really start to grow, because you can't hide your stuff anymore. Like if you like surround yourself with good people that are going to call you out on your stuff, because that is actually how you grow. Like I don't know. Sometimes I isolate myself and I'm thinking I'm doing so good, but then I get into public with my friends or our community and I'm like, oh, I got to work on some things still.
But what are some of, and that's really good. I completely agree with you. But for a person who maybe hasn't gotten to the place where they're able to understand how that community is doing well for them, like what is something someone can do to kind of get themselves to a place of like being able to receive that community, and not being in a place where like they're still hurting when they even interact with people?
That's a really deep question. I think that everybody's going to be a little bit different, right? But I do think that it's going to come down to eventually everybody's got to humble themselves at a certain point. And I think that God is working through people's, honestly, trash and garbage and all the gunk that we got in our lives. And so sometimes you're going to be in a different season, and sometimes like you're going to need to go through a healing state or whatever. But I do think that when you can get excited about running the race rather than people's perceptions of you or anything like that, and you can humble yourself to be like, okay, I am ready to take feedback. And finding the right, like one or two people that you trust to bring stuff with.
Don't just put it your whole life on blast.
Don't put it on blast. You got to really find, and the one thing that I actually, this kind of goes in community and stuff like that, but I think that our generation and in the West, we've lost the art of mentorship. In the sense of like, there are older people in your life that have already run the race ahead of you, and they're in a different place than you, and they know they have wisdom. And I do think that relationships have to be built over time, but it is super vital to find those people in your life that you can trust, that are going to tell you how it is to make you better. And we learn this in film all the time, right? Because you have to get your films critiqued all the time. But getting your heart in a posture that when you're going to go to somebody, get yourself ready to be like, I want advice. And I think this is also something too. It's like me and my girlfriend always talk about this. Is like, do you want me to listen or do you want me to help? Right. And so like getting yourself in a heart posture that's like, I am ready to listen. I want to know, how do I do better? And that's a good question that you should always be asking yourself is like, all right, like what is genuinely, I go to somebody and genuinely ask, what is something I can work on? Right. So I think it's different for everybody. It's kind of a hard question. I think that everybody's journey is going to be a little bit different, but it really comes down to you needing to take the step to open up. Right.
100%. It's such a hard thing to do.
What's the C.S. Lewis quote that's like, love, like with love, there's always going to be pain. But you could totally hide, you could lock your heart in a box, but in there it's going to like die slowly versus like eventually you do need to kind of open up, and it's hard. Like community and working with other people, there's suffering in it for sure.
There is, but there's a joy as well.
There's joy, and there's a reward.
So much joy.
The reward is so much higher through the suffering than there is in the hiding and just like being closed off. Like it just always is. It's hard. It's harder, but it's way more rewarding.
Way more. No, I think that's beautiful. That's super beautiful. Well, thank you, bro. Thank you for coming on and sharing a bit of your story. And just sharing a bit of advice too. I definitely gained something from it. So I appreciate you taking the time.
I'm glad I said something that was kind of smart.
Just one thing.
Just one thing.
All I'm looking for is a 5-second clip to throw on Instagram.
You're going to cut out all the other hours worth of stuff.
Well, I actually don't release this whole podcast.
Oh, nice.
We just Yeah.
Do it in bits. Just do it in smart bits.
Yeah.
Make me look good.
But yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I'm super hyped to hear more about the movie process and your pitch process and trying to get that locked down. And seems like things are going well with life. And so that brings me a lot of joy. So
Thanks for
I'm
having
excited
me.
we got to.
Hopefully the next
chat.
time you have me on, we'll be in the movie process. We'll be making a movie.
Oh, if you're making a movie, you're coming back on and you're sharing about
That's
it.
That's the only way I can come back on is if I'm making a movie.
If not, you're a total failure and we're never going to talk again.
Love it. At least you're honest.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Well, thanks guys for listening, and make sure to tune in and let's continue to grow together and learn together, and let's continue to be dreamers together.
I like that. That's good.
Wow. I love it. Thanks guys. Peace.